lakes and fields. Outdoor ramblings, rambling about the outdoors with Milton and O'Neill. Rambling about the outdoors with Milton and O'Neill. Hello, folks. I'm Milton Crabapple, and welcome to another episode of Outdoor Ramblings. I'm here with my friend, my mentor, my buddy, I don't know what all else, the legendary O'Neill Williams. How you doing, O'Neill?
Outstanding. It's springtime.
It is springtime, and we had something happen really important yesterday.
Wow, wasn't that something?
We had this solar eclipse.
Wow.
Now, I don't know about where you are, but down here in Crabapple, it didn't do much. I think it got just a little bit darker, but you couldn't tell much about it here. But anyway, it was a big deal if you was in the area where it was a full eclipse.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I saw some of it on television, and yes, indeed, there was quite active. Over here, it just kind of softened the shadows a little bit, just softened the edges of the shadows, but otherwise, it didn't do much.
Well, when I was a kid, Grandpa Crabapple used to tell us about the big solar eclipse of 1923. And we used to love to hear that story. Back then, they didn't have televisions and radios and cell phones and meteorologists and special bulletins and all these kind of things to tell you what was going to happen. Back in them days, if you had an eclipse, it just eclipsed on you wherever you happened to be at the time, and you just had to deal with it. But he said they didn't know nothing about something like that was going to happen. So he said he was out and went out and plowed, been plowing all morning. He said he come in, Grandma Crabapple rung the dinner bell, said she had something for him to eat. He took a break. He tied the mule to the fence post and midnight. And he went in there and got him something to eat and went back outside and started plowing again. And said he'd been plowing, but about 15 minutes from all of a sudden it commenced to get dark outside. Well, he said he didn't think a whole lot of it, but it got darker and darker, and said the mule just wanted to go to the barn. And he said the quail was whistling and all the chickens come in around the hen house and everything. So he went ahead and put the mule up. By then it was totally dark. He said he went in the house. Grandma done had supper ready.
Evidently.
Said they sat down, ate supper, and read the Bible. She said, them days is getting short. He said, well, they sure are getting short. So they went to bed and said they've been laying in the bed for about 5 minutes, and all of a sudden it commenced to get daylight again. She looked over at Grandpa and said, you think them days is getting short? She said, what'd you think about that night we just had?
Yes, indeed.
They didn't know nothing about an eclipse.
It made me wonder about people from long ago.
Yeah, I imagine they thought something big was about to fall upon them, I reckon.
Absolutely. Thought the end had come.
The end had come. That's true. I wish you could have been with me a couple of days ago.
What happened?
I went fishing. Fella's got a pond he lets me fish in, and I went over there. And I like to fish on them big water reservoirs and stuff, but I like to get in them farm ponds too.
Yeah, you got them corralled in the pond.
But all the bass was on the bed. You could see some big bass on the bed, and cruising back and forth. They get into a little pattern, strolling back and forth around that bed. Anyhow, I wanted to talk to you about that this morning, about fishing in the springtime, what they call, I reckon, the spring bite, I guess.
Right.
When things crank up and knowing when to fish and when not to fish. They turn on good right before they go on the bed, and then they go on the bed, they don't like to bite. And then after that, I reckon they come off of the bed and they start biting again pretty hot, don't they?
Well, what happens is for the female, when she gets done, she's been on the bed. When she gets done, she's pretty well worn out and hadn't had much to eat, and I don't know how long. So she'll go out a travel route out the side of the point or out the edge of the creek channel, and she'll just take up residence out there and not do anything. The ones I always fish for were the males, because they're all over the banks, all up close. But since you brought it up, I'm real conservative about fishing. I always looked at fishing as a challenge. And fishing for a big bass on the bed that I can see is no challenge.
Well,
I don't have to have one to take home to eat, but I can make her bite. If you'll put a spring lizard in, she'll try to pick it up and move it out, and then throw it back in again and throw it back in again. And then finally she'll just grab it and you can set the hook on her and you can catch her.
where do you get spring lizards?
Yeah.
Where do you get them?
Well, I go to the creek and get under the rocks.
Well, I haven't caught any in a while.
Yeah.
But, you know, they quit selling them. I used to catch them and sell them to the fish bait store, but they made that illegal.
Yes. But the way I look at it, if of course a lot of fishermen say, well, I caught this 8-pounder off the bed, and I got her to the boat, but I put her back in. Well, you don't know if that bass went back to that bed and birthed those eggs or not. So
well, that's true.
I'm an absolutist about that sort of thing. I don't fish for bass on the bed. I don't catch them and put them back. I see bass on the bed. I say, congratulations. That's the next generation. I appreciate it.
Well, that's true. Now, when I was young, when I was a kid, we was fishing for something to eat.
Yeah.
That's why we was fishing, and we would
Correct.
find them on the bed, and that was just the bigger he was, the more meals you could get out of
Sure,
it, you know.
Sure.
But them spring lizards, like you say now and then, if you go buy spring lizards at a bait store back then, what I was always looking for was be going through them boxes. They had moss in there and everything with all them lizards, but there'd always be one in there that was orange, had little black spots on him.
Yeah.
Now that one right there would catch anything in the lake.
And the reason it would is because you had such confidence in it that you used it every chance you got.
I reckon so. But now this,
I mean, the bass is not sitting there saying, I'm kind of hungry, but I'm looking for a spring lizard with spots on him.
Well, I always figured because it was orange colored, they could just see him better.
Well, that's good reasoning. I'm not sure it's true, but that
maybe so.
It works for you. It works for me.
I had a red one time, didn't have no spots, but I took a magic marker and doctored him up a little bit.
It worked probably.
So on this spring bite now, what advice would you give somebody? It's warming up. You know a lot more about these big reservoirs, and that's where most people fish, like Lake Lanier and prime examples. And tell us a little bit about how to know when the spring bite's going to kick off. What do you look for?
It's always going to be the moon phase and the water temperature. And the new moon and the water temperature in the territory of the high 50s, and that's when it happens. I mean, you can go in the wintertime and see a few bass shallow, but they're not going to stay there. And even in the springtime, the shallow bite, the shallow fish doesn't stay there all day. He leaves and goes out the edge of the point, the edge of the creek channel, and so forth. I'm just a deep water fisherman. And when I know I've taken people before and pull up to a point, on a major reservoir in the southeast in the Appalachian Mountains in this deep, clear water, you make a cast or two to the shallow end of the point. And if you don't get bit, you leave. No, those fish are still there. They're just not in 3 feet of water. They're in 30 feet of water out at the end of the point or on the edge of the creek channel. Turn the boat around and put the boat in 3 feet of water and cast into 20 feet. That's where the bass are. And I have, of course, I don't learn anything on my own. I always learn something from somebody else. And I was taught that long ago, and I've taught that to many, many people. What are you doing? I'm turning the boat around. The fish aren't here. The fish are out on the end of the point. What? Yes, they are. And then you can sit there and you can catch them one after another after another. If there's 2 on the point, there's 200 out at the end of the point.
Ain't that something? But it just kind of goes against the grain of folks that was raised fishing in farm ponds.
Absolutely.
Because the fish ain't out there behind you. They're probably right around the bank or a log or somewhere. They're waiting on something to crawl into the water.
I had a fisheries biologist show me with oxygen rated instruments one time in late spring in a pond that there was oxygen to about 8 feet deep. Beyond 8 feet deep, out in the middle of the pond, beyond 8 feet deep, there was no oxygen for the fish.
Ain't that something?
So they will stay shallow in a pond.
In a lot of ponds, and this is something I've noticed through the years, a lot of people even people that own ponds now, that pond ain't near as deep as they think it is.
No, yeah, it's true.
They say, why, I saw when we built this pond, it was 18 feet deep out there in the middle. That's how deep it is. I said, how long ago was that? Well, about 40 years ago. I said, well, it's probably about 7 or 8 feet deep out there now, because they just get filled in, silted in.
Yes. And there's nothing for the fish out there in the summertime. They will be located in the shallow waters where there's something growing.
My favorite time used to be to get out there in them ponds, right like this morning when I woke up. Now, it was raining this morning. Been raining pretty hard this morning, but after a good rain, especially it rained all night long, and you get out there in the morning, now all them bugs and things up in the trees got knocked off in the water, and all that water running down off the hillsides, the stuff getting into the water. And I used to get out there with a little old white buzz bait. Now, not a big one, but just a small one. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, you could just have a ball. Them fish would just jump out of the water to get that thing.
That's
always
right.
After a good rain.
It stirs things up. It's the natural food chain.
It sure does. It sure does. Well, when are you going fishing next? When are me and you going fishing? You know, I got this
pretty soon. I want to go to some place that I haven't been before. But that doesn't mean that, and this is a recommendation, that doesn't mean that you have to change lakes.
Well, for instance, you ain't never been to Old Man Easter's Lake.
No, and I'm going to need to go there for sure.
You are.
But my point is, if you're a longtime fisherman and you've got a favorite lake in these major reservoirs across the South, whether it's Lake Lanier or all up through the Carolinas and Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee and northern Alabama. Okay. Well, I want to go to a new lake. Well, I'm going to go to Lake Lanier. Well, hold on a second now, because you've been going there since 1957. Try this. It's fun. Go to your lake, but don't go any place on that lake that you've ever been before. It's like going to a new lake. So let's think about it for a second. Say you look at the map and you see that there's a little creek going into the lake up there where you've never been before. I wonder if there's any fish in that little creek that might be, I don't know, 100 yards deep off the lake and 50 yards wide. I wonder if there's any fish in there. What would you say, Milton?
Well, I'm sure there's fish in there.
Absolutely. And you've never fished for them before. It's like going to a new lake. You're going to schools of bass that likely have not seen a lure yet. Certainly one of yours. So it's like getting into new water.
It's like going to the crabapple family reunion every year. They bring all this food in there and they have it on this long, long table. You get in that line. By the time you get halfway down the line, your plate's full. And then you come up to something you really didn't know was there and you want some, but you ain't got room for it on your plate.
That's right. That's why you shouldn't start with the biscuits, because they take up so much room.
That's true. That's true. Now you just got back. I want to change the subject if I can.
Okay.
You just got back from out in Oklahoma, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I went out to see Travis, and he and his dad, and we all went out there to visit the great grandchildren and all that. And it's turkey season out there, and of course those turkeys out there in the top right panhandle of Texas and over into Oklahoma, those are the Rio Grande turkeys. That's a whole different story than hunting the eastern. That Rio Grande, I'm exaggerating, of course, he'll come up and practically eat out of your hand. You know, the eastern hurts your feelings.
The eastern will make you throw your gun down through the woods and swear off turkey hunting from now on.
Absolutely. The Rio, if you go out, and unless you're a knucklehead, if you'll just go out and sit down, be quiet, be camoed, make one or two calls, just hold on, he'll be there in a few minutes.
I reckon that's because there's so many of them out there.
Oh, man. I know Travis, the day that Tim bagged his turkey, and that's the biggest Rio Grande I think I've ever seen. I'll bet you that critter weighed 25 pounds. But that day, by the time they shot that bird, and they hadn't been sitting down but about 25 minutes, they had already seen 14 jakes and 40 hens. That place is just working alive with birds.
Goodness gracious.
Yes, indeed.
That's something.
I had another friend that was already out there, and he claimed he came in because claims are cheap. He said, I said, well, did you take one today? No, I really didn't want to. His name's Gary. He's a good friend of mine. And he said, but I'll bet you I saw 80 turkeys. And I believe him. Why not? You know,
last time I saw 80 turkeys was at Kmart grocery section the week before Thanksgiving.
That's exactly right.
That beats all. Well, O'Neill, I got to get out from here. I got some work I got to do today.
Well, you got time to just busy this morning.
Sit around and talk all morning long. I could, but I guess I best get going. So I'm going to check us out of here. You know, I appreciate. By the way, no, I'm not right yet, because we got some other things. Tell us about your book.
Well, it's still selling, quite surprisingly, but it's O'Neill Outside, 65 years in the outdoors, and with a subtitle of People and Places Along the Way, O'Neill Outside. And it is not about me. It's about all these places and the people that I got to go hunting and fishing and hiking. Well, not hiking, but in the Rocky Mountains for elk and bears and everything. And it makes for a good read. And it's a great read with real short chapters for a youngster to read, a teenager.
Well, I read it myself and found it to be quite an interesting book.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I enjoyed writing it. It was a pleasure to reminisce to myself even these trips and these people and the things that I learned from them during the show productions and so on. So, and there's some mighty good places in the book for a reader to say, I'd like to go there. I'd like to do that myself. And a lot of them are what you say a commercial operation, like Cajun Vista Lodge down in Barataria, Louisiana. That's one of the greatest places I've ever been. And I'm
been
going
there
to
with
go
you
again this year.
Yeah, I've been with you there several times.
Yes, indeed.
Me and Dude, we have a good time down there.
I was talking about that out there. Excuse me for talking so much, but I was when I was out with Travis and his dad out in Oklahoma, we got to talking about Cajun Vista, and one of the great, I think I got the numbers right, one of the great demonstrations about the capability and fishability about the Louisiana is for speckled trout all along the Gulf Coast, all both sides of Florida and up the Atlantic coast. The limit for speckled trout, I think, is 5 over 12 inches. At Cajun Vista and Barataria and the swamps, if you will, the limit is 25. So there's plenty of fish there.
Plenty of fish.
And your experience there too is you pretty well got a limit by about noon, right?
Well, you're gonna have a sore elbow.
That's a fact.
Setting them hooks.
That's exactly right.
It's a lot of fun. And plus, if you can really get into them good, the guide catches a limit too. He's allowed a limit. So you come home from out there with a bunch of fish.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Bunch of fish.
Well, write it down. It's October the 17th, and you're going.
I think I got it on my calendar.
Yes, you do.
You sure if it don't interfere with the annual Pickle Pig Street bobbing contest, because that's coming up in the fall too.
Oh, I love to watch that.
Yeah, it is fun. I'm telling you. Well, O'Neill, this has been fun.
Yes, indeed. It always is.
Folks, I appreciate you all listening to the Outdoor Ramblings podcast with me and O'Neill. And stay tuned, and we'll see you next time. And remember this, wherever you go, whatever you do, keep your nose to the wind, keep your eyes on the skyline. And if you hear somebody yell low bird, don't forget to duck.
Be sure and take
Outdoor Ramblings, rambling around the woodlands, the rivers, lakes, and fields. Outdoor Ramblings, rambling about the outdoors with Milton and O'Neill. Rambling about the outdoors with Milton and O'Neill.